Welcome in. It's From the Bleachers, the podcast. Brought to you by the Fan Sports Network.
Welcome back on in, everybody, from the Bleachers here on the Fan Sports Network. Kaden Formaster, Nathan Nelson, hanging out with you guys inside the Finley Hyundai studio. Welcome into the show. Wednesday, as always, Wednesdays are a little bit slower in the sports world. Not a ton going on a Wednesday today, but I will tell you this. Yesterday, there was a game that I was very ready for, and I was going to rub it in your face because the Utah Hockey Club was taking on Minnesota Wild, and they were leading. Up until 43 seconds left, Minnesota decides to go and tie it up.
I believe it was Marco Rossi who managed to tie it up.
Yeah, that turd. Anyway, so he ties it up, and they go into overtime. Overtime, scoreless. Obviously,
it was a good game, dude. It was a really, really good game.
And then went down to shootouts, and Minnesota got one. Utah couldn't get anything in. So they won it in a shootout, but it was still a good game.
It was a super good game, and the Wild have been winning those close games.
And the Wild are one of the best teams right now in the NHL.
One of the best teams in the NHL, and Utah stuck right with them. And I believe Utah has won. They had won like 3 in a row, something like that, or six and one. Their last 7
games.
Won
a lot. Though.
They've been really good recently, and this was another really good performance for the hockey club against a good team. Specifically, Clayton Keller, who managed to get 2 of the 4 goals last night for the hockey club on basically the exact same play, just 2 times in a row. So it was kind of funny. But here's one thing I noticed. The hockey club, their goalie, 5th in goals allowed against.
Yeah.
The Wild, Philip Gustafsson, 1st in goals allowed against. What was the final score? It was 5-4. So it was kind of it was a bit of a shootout offensively in that game, despite having 2 of the better goalies in the NHL. Just found that was a little bit funny. But yeah, my team's first ever journey to Salt Lake City.
Yeah. It was a good game. And that third period.
You got 3 more chances to rub it in, by the way.
That third period.
They play a lot.
That third period was phenomenal.
Yes, definitely. Lots of scoring.
Lots of scoring. There were 5 goals there. Going into it was 2-1. Minnesota was up. Minnesota actually got, I think it was 4-2 at one point, and then that's when Utah decided to go on that run, and they literally got all 3 goals. It was just like boom, 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 and now all of a sudden Utah's up. Actually, it was 3-1. Then, like I said, they tied it up at 4, and just couldn't
get it done in overtime, and that's you got to get it done in overtime because shootouts, they can really not go your way really, really fast, if that makes sense. But so you got to get that done in overtime. But yeah, it was a super, super good game. Just Wild and Hockey Club decided to have a really banger of a game on some random December night.
That's right. Vejmelka, the goalie for Utah, has been really kind of taking over a lot of the goalie games as well. So, they have Connor Ingram as well, but he's been doing really good. I've been really impressed with what he's been able to do over the last few games. So he's kind of transitioned from being the secondary goalie into being the first choice. So that's really cool for him.
And then on the other side for the Wild, Philip Gustafsson, he's kind of taken over the goalie duties as well. And they have Marc-Andre Fleury, one of the better goalies all time. Yeah, he's a classic. Golden Knights legend.
Draft of 2003?
Yeah.
I want to say.
I believe I think he's one of 2 players to still be playing before the 04-05 lockout.
Yes. Yeah.
And the only goalie to be doing it, to be playing.
Yeah, he's been playing for ages.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time. This is his final season as well, he announced.
I think most people around him probably do recognize his name. He was a part of the expansion draft, was on Pittsburgh, came over to Vegas as a part of the expansion draft. And
spent 3-4 seasons there.
And he was really, coming into the expansion draft, he was the top player. Everyone was surprised, but a big part of that was just because Pittsburgh had a really good goalie laying in wait. And losing Fleury wasn't that big of a deal, even though he was still one of the top goalies.
But he is kind of a Pittsburgh legend for sure. Multiple All-Stars, Stanley Cups, all that.
Yep. So wasn't able to get that Stanley Cup in Vegas. They moved on from him when Vegas won the Stanley Cup. He was already in Minnesota, but anyway.
So shootout last night in Salt Lake City. Really, really fun game.
I want to say it was the first shootout of the year for Utah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Technically, that would be the first shootout ever if it was the first shootout of the year.
Yeah, that's true. First shootout to ever happen in Utah.
Yeah, this is their first ever.
But they meet in, I believe, about 10 more days or so in Minnesota. 20th. Yeah, they play each other 4 times this season since they're in the same division.
Yep. They're going to play each other coming up on the 20th. Tomorrow, they're in Denver taking on the Avalanche. So
okay.
So that'll be a good game tomorrow at 7 o'clock.
By the way, man, those Utah jerseys, those black jerseys, once you get a logo and stuff, they are so clean. Yeah. I love those jerseys.
Honestly, I kind of hope they keep the jersey. It's simple. It just says Utah.
Yeah, no, I like the jersey and the colors. Just need a logo and a name, and I'm good.
Get us a logo. Get us a name. I think keeping the jersey, and maybe, you know what, make it your alternate jersey or something. You could still have a really good jersey with whatever the new logo is going to be and slap that on there. That's great. But keep this jersey for a little bit as maybe an alternate jersey because it does look really good.
It looks sleek.
Really good.
It looks nice, yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But that was the other question a lot of people are asking is when are they going to actually announce a name or a logo and
after the season, and it's going to be after the season.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I wouldn't even until the season ends in April. I wouldn't even think about it.
It's just a distraction. You don't want to distract with it.
Yeah.
So at this point, realistically, and right now, Utah's probably not going to make the playoffs. They could go on a run and make it.
Hopefully, they do.
I would love to see it happen. But if they don't make the playoffs, I would say the announcement could come maybe even like towards the tail end of the playoffs or something like that because it's not too far of a turnover until the draft starts. So I would say around May would be my guess for when they're going to announce the new name of whatever Utah's going to be.
Yeah.
So whether that's Yeti, I don't think it's going to be Yeti at this point, just because from what I've heard behind the scenes, there's a lot of law things involved, and that's just because Yeti, the brand, like if you're thinking like a Yeti coolers and cups and whatever, they already have all of the copyrights and trademarks and whatever around.
Outlaws is another Yeti. One that I've heard that's been a favorite, which I would really like. Pioneers.
I like Mammoth personally a lot.
I don't like Venom.
I don't like Venom.
I don't want to do Venom.
Personally, my top 2 are Mammoth and Outlaws. If they choose one of those 2, I am all in on those.
I have a top 3: Outlaws, Pioneers, and Yeti.
Okay. Interesting.
So
yeah, and Yeti I'm not opposed to. I just don't think that they're going to figure it out.
Outlaws number 1, though.
I think Yeti is the organization's number 1. And outside of that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really like Mammoth just because, I mean, Mammoths have, if I'm not mistaken, have been known to be found in North America. Specifically, I've heard that they have been found in Utah. I don't know. I haven't done the research.
We don't know
but that is what I saw someone. I saw someone talking about that. So I'm like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of dinosaurs.
Well, then
that
at that point, do the Utah Tyrannosaurus Rexes, since those guys used to roam Utah.
Well, we already have a Utah raptor. There's literally an animal called the Utah raptor, a dinosaur that has been discovered here in Utah.
Yeah.
And do you know who has the Raptors? Nobody. So let's do it. No one is the Raptors in
NHL. Yeah.
Yes. So Toronto obviously has it for basketball.
Toronto. I was going to say, yeah.
But the Raptors would have been cool.
Speaking of basketball, by the way, Larry Markkinen and Will Hardy, and as well as the Jazz and Hockey Club owner, they were also all at the game last night.
Yeah, it's always good to see them out.
Utah crossover right there.
That's right. All right. Well, let's move on a little bit. We always love to do a fun little segment called Ask AI, where we ask AI a random question and see what it comes up with. And today we asked it the question of who are the best athletes to never win a championship. So let's go over this list of who are the best athletes to never win a championship. We're going to start with basketball. This is what AI has told us. We're not talking Allen Iverson, but we will talk Allen Iverson.
Yes.
Because he is on this list.
And if you have anyone, or if I have anyone to add, just throw them in there real quick.
Yeah. So we're going to start with basketball. Let's start there. And first on this list is Charles Barkley. I feel like that's a lot of everybody's first when you're talking basketball. You're going to throw in a few names into this conversation. All the names we're going to get to, all of these names AI came up with. Charles Barkley just happened to be the first on their list, especially considering that he did come close. 93, they lost to the Bulls in the finals.
Yep, as did the next 2 guys on our list. But yeah, Barkley, like it says on here, one of the most dominant power forwards ever. The round mound of rebound, that is an awesome nickname.
Yeah.
He was an excellent board getter, could score, even though he was a bit smaller for his size. He was a beast, and I do wish he managed to get a title, but like a lot of teams ran into. They ran into the buzzsaw of the 90s Bulls. So
that's right. The next two, they did the exact same. Karl Malone and John Stockton.
It's too close to home in here in Utah.
I mean, quite literally.
Yes, literally.
It's been...
John Stockton especially is one of my all-time favorite players.
Yeah.
And I know I'm a Wolves fan and stuff, but Jazz are number 2, and I love John Stockton especially. Leader in assists and steals all time, and he doesn't have a ring. I mean, that's devastating, man. That hurts.
You know what's crazy about this list? So Karl Malone, John Stockton, they're coming in 2 and 3. We're talking, this is almost 30 years ago that this happened. And it's still it's sour for people here in Utah.
It is.
And I don't disagree. It's sour for me. I don't even remember it. I don't remember. Listen, I was born in December of 93, okay? I was born in December of 93. How old was I when this was going on? I was like 4 or 5 years old. I don't remember this, okay? I tell you what, I watched a lot of Jazz games. I'm sure I watched these games. I just don't remember it. It was long enough ago that it's just outside the memory. And am I still sour about it? Yes, I am.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm still sour about it.
Yeah, I wasn't even live for it at all, and I'm not even a Jazz fan, and I'm still sour about it, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Me and my dad, we went to a Jazz game last season, and there was a Wi-Fi network available, and it was called Jordan Pushed Off.
Yeah, that's what.
So that's all that tells you all you need to know.
That's what the arena's Wi-Fi is Jordan Pushed Off.
Jordan Pushed Off.
And what's interesting is whether you watch The Last Dance, whether you just even go back and watch the play itself, that final play where being guarded by Brian Russell, and he does create some space, we'll say. No official's going to call that.
Yeah.
No official will
not in
ever
that situation with MJ. No way.
No
way.
So, am I sour about it? Did he push off? It's hazy. It's a big maybe. Even if he did, in that scenario, they just don't call those calls.
Yeah. And if it makes Utah feel any better, I don't know how Jordan feels, but I personally feel like the Jazz gave the Bulls the biggest run for their money in any of their 6 finals wins. Both those series were super good.
Yeah, absolutely. Also on this list, Allen Iverson. We said we'd talk a little Allen Iverson.
Here's AI, answer.
Never got it done with Philly, never got it done in Denver, just never got it done.
Yeah.
But he was one of the best point guards.
He went to one the 2001 NBA Finals and dropped that one to the Lakers. They won game 1, dropped the next 4 though.
Yep. Elgin Baylor is the final one to make this list here.
This is kind of a devastating one because it says right there he retired 9 games into the Lakers season, and that's true. He did retire into their season, and I think it was about a game or 2 before they proceeded to go on a 33-game winning streak, which is still a record, and then they ended up winning the championship that year.
Isn't that one of those where you're just kind of like, can we just give him one anyway?
Yep.
Like, he was on the team when the season started.
I think he gets a ring, but he's not officially a champion.
He's not officially in the books, which is tough. Yeah, and you just never know, you know?
And he had lost 8 times, like all to the Boston Celtics. He had been dealing with injuries. He was just kind of done. And then the Lakers pulled it off against the Knicks later in that year's finals.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right. On to football. We get to probably one of the biggest names in football to never win a championship, and that goes to Dan Marino. He's going to start us off. And listen, this was, in my opinion, Dan Marino ahead of his time.
Yeah, 100%.
In today's NFL would be unstoppable. Like, he would be the number 1 quarterback in the NFL if he played today.
It's always hard to say with quarterbacks and players from back then how well they would mesh with current NFL players. Like when you take like Tom Brady versus Joe Montana or whatever. Yeah. It's just a different game. Dan Marino is one of those few exceptions where, honestly, if you took him from his era, put him in this era, he would absolutely dominate. Yeah, he was putting up 5,000-yard passing seasons, almost 50 touchdown passing seasons. This dude was absurd.
Yeah.
And went to a Super Bowl his second season, lost, never went back.
And that was when passing wasn't as big. Really. I mean, in a way, yes, it was. You know, we say it wasn't, but there were a few teams that were doing it.
It wasn't as prominent.
Yeah, there were a few teams that were doing it and doing it well, but
no one better than Dan Marino.
Yeah, no one better than Dan Marino. But it really was really strong into the running back game and the running game. You had your Emmitt Smiths of the world that just were the dominant players
Walter
of the time. Yeah. exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, when he retired, he held like every important passing record ever. So
yeah,
he's still one of the greatest.
Yeah, absolutely. The next one on the list, Barry Sanders, and he's one of these guys where played with the Lions. Obviously, didn't even go to a Super Bowl at all.
Went to one NFC title game.
Yeah, between him and Calvin Johnson, who is not on this list, but I'd throw him on here. You just got to feel bad for for these guys that played on Detroit during that time.
The fact that Detroit, and I know they're in a much better place now, but don't let this cloud the fact that they are a poverty franchise.
100%.
And they have caused two of the greatest to ever play at their position, Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, to retire early because they were so sick of losing.
They're just like, yeah, you know what? We're probably not leaving Detroit. You guys are going to do everything you can to keep us around here. I'm just going to retire.
Yep.
I probably have 5 more years left in me. It's fine.
Almost happened with Matthew Stafford, but they manned up, traded him to the Rams, and then he won a Super Bowl his first year.
And he's still going. And hey, the Rams right now are one of the top offenses in the NFL, and they would be a scary team to meet up against when healthy right now. They are really good.
They're rolling
at this point, but they still have a lot of room to go until they could make a playoff. So, but hey, you know what? You just took down the Bills. I think anything could happen for them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right.
Then 2 Vikings coming up on this list as well.
Couple of Vikings. And Randy Moss is the first one on this list. He had his moments, specifically more with New England than with Minnesota. But that was when New England was going through a little bit of a dry spell. There were a few guys.
His first year there was first or second was that undefeated year, and it was amazing.
Yeah, and then they lose. I want to say in the AFC Championship game. Is that when they lost?
No, they lost.
They lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants.
Yeah, to the Giants. It was
that's
that year.
what it was. So you have seasons like that where Randy Moss was a part of that group, and there are just certain guys where you're like, they didn't win a title. And there's certain guys too like that where it's like, oh, they played on good teams. They played on the Patriots, right? Or whatever. And there's just a few names they just didn't do it.
Yep. And Moss is one of them.
He's one of them.
And then Fran Tarkenton, one of the most innovative and game-changing quarterbacks ever, really brought scrambling to the table as well. Went to the 3 times, lost them all with the Vikings.
Yep. All right.
We don't have to talk too much about the Vikings. We can move on.
Let's go to baseball. We'll go to baseball.
I'm seeing one guy that is really missing on this list, and we'll get to him in a second.
Okay. All right. We'll start off the list with Ted Williams. Ted Williams,
one of the best, if not the best, pure hitter in MLB history. I mean, he went to fight in World War II and then came back and absolutely dominated.
Yeah. So, batting 400 is insane. So to be able to do that.
I don't care about the era. I don't care about any of that. Batting over 400 is absurd.
Insane. Yeah. I mean, even, listen, when there's high school kids that are batting 400, and we're talking like there's some of the best hitters that are still in high school that could probably go play in the MLB right away. Even those guys are like batting just over 400. Like a lot of them, then that's impressive, right?
Baseball's a hard sport. I mean, if you hit 33% of the time, you're probably going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And what's crazy to me is specifically talking about baseball here and talking about hitting percentages, right? And saying that, this guy was a 400 hitter. That is what everyone claims is the toughest thing in baseball to do is just hit a baseball. And not just hit a baseball, but to hit it into an area where you can get on base. And that is not easy to do. It's crazy
difficult, dude.
And so, listen, I played baseball all my life growing up. I played a lot of baseball growing up. I know how hard it is to hit a baseball, and I know how frustrating it is when you don't hit a baseball. But that's what makes a good baseball player is to realize I could miss half the time and I would still be the best hitter on my team. And that's such a hard mentality to get over. So guys that can do it well and go out there and bat for 400, their mental level of just being able to be like, I didn't get that one, but I can get the next one.
Yep.
It's so insane to me.
That's how
good baseball players have to have really good brains.
Yeah.
You got to be able to convince yourself that I'm not a bad hitter just because I struck out just barely.
And of course, then Ted Williams had to play when they were cursed and they couldn't get a World Series. So that's just super unfortunate. But the next one is Ernie Banks, Cubs legend, 2-time MVP. I think he was smiling all the time. He was in a good mood somehow because the Cubs never even reached a postseason in his career, which I find absurd. I know the playoffs and stuff were a totally different system back in the day. You had to basically win your league to get in and stuff like that. So it was super weird. But he played for 20 seasons or close to around there.
It was a long
and
time.
didn't even make the postseason.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I think we forget because the Cubs have had a pretty good stretch over the last 30 years of being a pretty solid team.
Mm-hmm.
They've made a lot of playoffs. They only won the one World Series, but again, a cursed team, right? So they almost kind of got a pass for not winning World Series. But
not even making the playoffs. I mean, come
but
on.
not making the playoffs for that long of a stretch is tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Then the next two to end it, we got Ken Griffey Jr. with one of the most beautiful swings ever, and Ty Cobb.
And Ken Griffey Jr., being on a bad franchise in Seattle where he kind of turned it around for them, but just never.
Him and Edgar Martinez just never amounted to it,
well,
like
and
you said.
Rodriguez was on that team. And it was just, there just wasn't a lot there. And that's the problem. You had these teams with more money that would just poach players. Mm-hmm. And so anytime you had someone that was somewhat good, they would go to the Yankees. They would go wherever, right?
Or in A-Rod's case, the Rangers and then the Yankees.
Or to the Rangers and then to the Yankees, exactly. So that's just kind of what happened for him. And then he went to Cincinnati with a very similar problem. Just
injuries as well,
not a lot of money on the team. It is what it is.
Yep. And then Ty Cobb, one of the best hitters ever. I know he played way, way back in the day, but he's still one of the greatest hitters ever. A bit controversial, but he made the World Series 3 times, lost them all.
Yeah.
Has over 4,000 career hits, I believe. And by the way, the one I wanted to add on that's not on this list is Barry Bonds. I know he's super controversial, but I mean, you think he would have won a World Series at some point, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people consider him the best player ever, and he never did it. He went to one, and
Well, and San Francisco ended up winning a pretty good chunk of World Series. I mean, just over the course of the last
in the 2010s.
20 years or so. But I mean, he was done around what year? Probably around
2007.
I was going to say 2006 was my thought.
7 was his last year, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're talking within 5 years after he leaves the team, all of a sudden it's, hey, well, let's go win some World Series.
Exactly. Really funny. And like I said, he went to one against the Angels in 2002 against your Angels. No, you're a Cubs fan. Sorry.
Yeah,
Angels are your second team, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
He went to there in the Angels against the Angels, and of course, they just went on a run and won it all. 2002.
Their only championship. Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Came at the expense of Barry Bonds.
At the expense of Barry Bonds. Was it worth it? Yes.
Yes, it definitely was.
Yep. Thank you for following along with From the Bleachers, the podcast with the Fan Sports Network. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or even over on YouTube and a few other places as well. But until next time, we'll see you.